All right, let's just dive straight into this explainer. Right out of the gate, we're confronting a pretty deep and honestly kind of uncomfortable challenge about the actual foundation of your life. We really need to ask ourselves, are we building a life of simple accumulation? Just gathering things, chasing status, stacking up accolades? Or are we building a life of genuine contribution? Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating set of ideas that force us to take a hard look at character, at our obligations, and at the kind of work that actually endures.
Take a second and really absorb this quote. It's not just some pleasant, feel-good aphorism you'd see on a poster. Actually, it acts more like a direct accusation. It's pushing us to ask if we're genuinely living authentically from the inside out. Are you defining your worth by your own internal standards? Or are you secretly keeping score based on external metrics that, at the end of the day, really just don't matter?
And that brings us to the central conflict we all deal with on a daily basis. Where are you spending your precious energy? Are you exhausted from performing for an audience, constantly crafting this pristine image and managing how people perceive you? Or are you actually head down doing the invisible foundational work? Because the world is changed by your example, not your opinion. But here's the catch. Before that opinion can even matter, the example literally has to exist. So the really cool thing here is how this entire philosophy is beautifully structured around one single spine, character expressed from the inside out. And this is supported by these 6 core clusters you see here, drawing from all over the place: military history, ancient philosophies, sports coaching, and just everyday heroism. It's not just a random collection of thoughts, right? It's a coherent map of what it actually means to be a person of substance. Here's our agenda for today, breaking this down into 5 logical pillars. 1. The inside-out challenge. 2. Action over perfect conditions. 3. Clarity and stoic obligation. 4. Choosing your heart. And 5. Presence and real luxuries. Let's start with section 1, the inside-out challenge. Ultimately, character isn't what you say, it's what you do, especially when it costs you something, and totally regardless of your external circumstances. I absolutely love this concept because it just strips away all the excuses. Michael Jordan famously noted this when he talked about mastering fundamentals over relying on raw talent. The appearance of effortless mastery, it's merely a product of correct repetition. Gary Player used to say, you must work very hard to become a natural golfer. What looks like pure grace from the outside is just the accumulated residue of invisible effort. Effort literally does not lie. Whether we're talking about the raw accountability of manual labor championed by Mike Rowe or a commanding general like John J. Pershing managing thousands of troops, the core principle is exactly the same. Pershing understood that a leader's inner clarity stops them from relying on a crowd's reaction to know their own worth. Think about it. Your character actually creates the weather that everyone else has to work inside. A weak leader demoralizes the best team, while a leader with an unshakable internal standard, they can elevate absolutely anyone. Which brings us to section 2, action over perfect conditions. This pillar is a massive wake-up call because it demands that we stop waiting for ideal circumstances. This is a trap so many of us fall into, right? We realized way too late that our patience was actually just a clever mask for outright paralysis. This ancient wisdom from Ecclesiastes reminds us that conditions will never be ideal. The team won't be perfectly healthy, the economy won't be entirely stable, and your schedule is certainly never going to be totally clear. As investor Sahil Bloom points out, there's no such thing as a perfect moment. We literally have to make moments perfect through our own decisive actions. Seth Godin and legendary coach Frosty Westering teach us something incredibly vital here. When you're out there building something entirely new, say creating a culture of accountability where none existed before, you aren't operating in a settled market. You're a pioneer, and pioneers face unavoidable friction that settlers never even see. You can't just sit around wondering when the right stage will arrive. You have to step up and make the big time right where you are. Moving on to section 3, clarity and stoic obligation. Let's be real for a second. Stoicism gets wildly misunderstood today. It's often marketed as some sort of ancient life hack. Take cold showers, wake up at 4 a.m., be an unflappable robot at work. But Ryan Holiday reminds us powerfully here that the ancient Stoics didn't give their lives because the philosophy made them highly effective executives. They did it because the philosophy demanded they be just. It's fundamentally about virtue, and that comes with a massive, undeniable obligation to other people. Marcus Aurelius understood this obligation perfectly. He knew that doing nothing is its own form of injustice. Think about Albert Camus' novel The Fall. where a man hears a scream in the night, ignores it, and just keeps walking. That is the ultimate failure of character. True Stoic character, on the other hand, is perfectly captured by Rabindranath Tagore. It requires planting trees knowing you will never sit in their shade. It's about building something that outlasts you, purely for the benefit of others. That leads us into Section 4, Choosing Your Hard.
Now we have to confront the reality of difficulty. Hardship is a mandatory curriculum in this life. It's not some obstacle you can just outrun or outsmart. Look at this comparison. The point here isn't that one path is super comfortable and the other is terrible. The profound realization is that hardship is completely unavoidable in either direction. See? Same thing here. You don't get to opt out of difficulty, but you do get to choose it. The discipline of consciously selecting your difficulty is itself the formative act of a well-lived life. The person who wakes up early to do the grueling work isn't some masochist. They're just someone who has proactively claimed their hardship rather than waiting for a different hardship to eventually claim them.
But here's the kicker. As Confucius argued thousands of years ago, just experiencing a difficulty all by itself isn't the lesson. Let's face it, people go through hard things all the time and learn absolutely nothing. Actively paying attention and reflecting on that hardship is what actually shapes your character. The resistance you face, that is the curriculum itself. Finally, Section 5, Presence and Real Luxuries. All this intense discipline, this stoic obligation, this choosing your hard, it needs room to actually breathe. I love this story about General Douglas MacArthur, who is arguably one of the most demanding military commanders in history. Every single morning at 7:30, he let his young son march him around the bedroom counting cadence. It was just unguarded, ridiculous joy. Pat Summitt and G.K. Chesterton echoed similar sentiments. The deepest lesson any team or child can receive is pure presence, seeing that a fiercely demanding reader still has the inner freedom to be completely disarmed by love. Notice how this list doesn't appear in any ancient Stoic text or hardcore coaching manual, yet it is the ultimate destination that all our previous voluntary hardship and discipline points toward. You don't build character just to suffer. You do it to earn these real luxuries, a life that isn't just performed for an audience, but actually genuinely inhabited. The architecture of your inner life directly shapes your outer life. If you constantly speak the language of defeat, well, you're going to build a life of defeat. But if you name those real luxuries we just looked at and use words of hope and belief to protect them daily, you construct something entirely different. You build a life from the inside out, something quiet, something strong, and something that actually lasts. I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to chew on today. The ancient Delphic command was, know thyself. But the practical command of a life well lived is, be what you know. The world is changed by your actions in the very moments that cost you something. So when the friction hits, how will you show up tomorrow? Will you be the example or just another opinion? Thanks for diving into this explainer with me. Keep building from the inside out.